The night was cold, the streets were empty, and the wind howled through the narrow alleys. A young man named Daniel walked home slowly after a long day of work. He kept his hands deep in his pockets, his breath visible in the icy air. The city was quiet, almost too quiet, and only the flickering streetlights gave some sense of life to the silent road. As Daniel turned a corner near an abandoned park, his eyes caught something unusual at first. He thought it was just a bundle of rags lying against the rusted fence. But then, the rags moved, and he froze in place. It was not rags, it was a figure, small, fragile, and trembling. He stepped closer, cautious but curious, in the weak glow of the streetlight. He saw her clearly for the first time, a girl, not human. Her skin was pale with a faint shimmer like moonlight, her hair long and tangled. Her large eyes shone faintly, glowing as if holding a hidden light within, and most shocking of all, she wore nothing. Her body shivered violently as the cold cut through her like knives. Daniel's heart skipped a beat. The girl was alien, there was no doubt about it. Yet she looked less like a threat and more like a lost child. Homeless, naked, and alone. Her lips quivered as if she wanted to speak, but her voice was broken by the cold. She looked up at him, eyes wide with fear and hope mixed together. "Please," she whispered, her voice trembling. It was not perfect English, but he understood. Her plea was simple, desperate. She wanted warmth, she wanted safety. For a long moment, Daniel stood frozen, his mind filled with questions. Who was she? Why was she here? Where had she come from? Was she dangerous? Should he run? But when his eyes met hers, all questions melted away. What he saw was not danger, but pain, slowly. Daniel took off his thick jacket. He walked closer, every step careful. The girl flinched as he moved, her body curling as if expecting harm. But Daniel's voice was gentle. "It's okay, I won't hurt you," he said. His words carried no threat, only warmth. He placed the jacket over her trembling shoulders. The moment the fabric touched her skin, something strange happened. Glowing patterns appeared across her arms and chest, like lines of silver fire. They pulsed faintly, alive with energy. Daniel gasped, taking a step back. The girl clutched the jacket tightly against herself, her eyes closing as relief washed over her. Her shivering slowed, her breath steadied. She looked smaller, softer, like a child who had finally found shelter after being lost in a storm. Daniel's heart ached as he watched her. He had never seen anything so fragile, so vulnerable. It was clear she had been abandoned, left to survive alone in a world that was not kind. But his thoughts were interrupted by a sudden sound, a crunch of gravel from the shadows behind him. His head turned sharply. The street was empty, or so it seemed. Yet he could feel it. Someone was watching. The girl's eyes opened wide, glowing brighter now. She whispered something in her own language, words Daniel could not understand. But the fear in her voice was enough to chill his blood. Her glowing marks flickered as if reacting to her emotions. Daniel looked around again, his instincts screaming. He knew this moment was no coincidence. She had not just wandered here. Something or someone had left her. Or worse, was still looking for her. He crouched down beside her, his voice firm but kind. "You're safe with me," he said, though he wasn't sure if it was true. He pulled the jacket tighter around her small body. His decision was made. He could not leave her, not in this condition, not in this cold. Her eyes shimmered with tears as she looked at him, for the first time since he found her. A faint smile touched her lips. It was weak, but real. The kind of smile that said she wanted to believe him. Daniel helped her to her feet. She was unsteady, leaning on him for support, her skin still glowing faintly beneath the jacket, like a living star trying to stay lit in the darkness. He wrapped an arm around her shoulders, guiding her away from the park, but as they walked, he could not shake the feeling of unseen eyes following their every step. The night air grew heavier, the shadows seemed to move, and somewhere, hidden in the dark, something whispered low, inhuman, and hungry. Daniel tightened his grip on the girl, his jaw clenched. He didn't know what danger awaited them, But one thing was certain. This girl was not safe. And now neither was he, yet, as they disappeared into the night, one truth stood out above all others. She was no longer homeless, no longer entirely alone. For the first time, she had found shelter not in walls or roofs, but in a human's heart. Daniel guided the girl carefully through the silent streets. His jacket was far too big for her, yet she held it close as if it were her only shield against the cruel night. Her steps were weak, her bare feet unsteady. Sometimes she stumbled, and Daniel would tighten his hold, supporting her as though she might collapse any moment. His small apartment was not far, just a few blocks away. It was not much, only a narrow one-bedroom space above a small store, but to her, it was a fortress compared to the freezing emptiness outside. The moment they stepped inside, the warmth of the heater touched her skin. She gasped softly, eyes wide as if she had never felt such comfort before. Daniel quickly moved around, pulling out a blanket, offering her water, and searching his shelves for something simple to eat. She sat on the couch, clutching the blanket around her small frame. Her glowing patterns dimmed, fading slowly as her body relaxed. He placed a bowl of soup on the table. The steam rose gently, filling the air with the smell of herbs and vegetables. She looked at it curiously, almost afraid. "It's food," Daniel said softly. He demonstrated by sipping a spoonful himself, then sliding the bowl toward her. The girl hesitated, then leaned forward. Her trembling hands wrapped around the spoon awkwardly. She copied his movements, lifting the spoon to her lips. The moment the warm liquid touched her tongue, her entire body shivered, but this time not from cold. Her eyes widened, glowing faintly again. She swallowed quickly, then ate another spoonful, faster, almost too fast. "Slow down," Daniel said gently. "There's more. No one will take it from you." His words calmed her. She looked at him, eyes filled with relief, as though he had promised her the impossible. Between sips, she tried to speak. Her voice was broken, her words strange, but he understood fragments. "Thrown away. Not wanted," she whispered, pointing to herself. Her hand trembled as she spoke. She had been abandoned, treated as useless, left to die in the cold. Daniel felt a heavy weight in his chest. He could not imagine such cruelty. She was young, fragile, and clearly intelligent, yet someone had cast her aside like trash. He clenched his fists, but then softened his tone. "Not here," he said. "Not anymore." The girl tilted her head. As if tasting the words carefully, she repeated them slowly. "Not anymore." Her voice was quiet but steady. It was her first attempt to mirror his language, and Daniel smiled. The hours passed. She grew more comfortable. Her glowing eyes explored every corner of the small room. She touched the books stacked on the shelf, the lamp glowing softly, even the rug beneath her feet. Each thing seemed new, a wonder she had never known. Daniel sat nearby watching. His exhaustion was real, but he could not sleep. Not while she remained a mystery. He wanted to understand who she was, where she came from, and why she had been abandoned. Yet he also knew pushing her too soon would only deepen her fear, so he stayed silent, letting her discover safety in her own way. Later, as the night deepened, she grew tired, her eyelids heavy. Daniel placed a pillow and blanket for her on the couch. She curled into it like a child, holding the jacket close as if it were a lifeline. Within minutes, her breathing slowed. Her glowing marks faded almost completely. She looked peaceful for the first time. Daniel sat at the table, head resting on his hand. His thoughts swirled. He had invited an alien into his home, a being who clearly carried secrets and dangers, but he felt no regret. Instead, he felt an odd sense of purpose, as if fate itself had placed her in his path. Suddenly, a sound outside made him lift his head. The creak of a step, the faint crunch of gravel. His heart skipped. He walked quietly to the window, pulling back the curtain just slightly. The street looked empty, but his instincts screamed otherwise. A shadow shifted near the far fence, moving with deliberate care. He narrowed his eyes. The same feeling from the park returned. Someone was watching. He glanced back at the girl, sleeping soundly, unaware of the threat that crept around them. A chill ran down his spine. Whoever had abandoned her might not be done with her, perhaps. They wanted to erase her completely. Daniel closed the curtain firmly. His jaw tightened. He sat back down, staring at the door. His decision was already made. If danger came, he would protect her. He did not know why. He did not know what she truly was. But one thing was certain. He could not let her fall into the same cruel hands that had left her to freeze. The night stretched on, silent, tense. Daniel stayed awake. A guardian in a small room, his mind filled with questions he could not yet answer, but his heart whispered the truth. He had given her shelter, and now she was no longer just a stranger. She was his responsibility. And as the first light of dawn touched the horizon, Daniel knew one thing with certainty: her presence would change his life forever. The morning came quietly. Sunlight pushed its way through the curtains of Daniel's small apartment. The city outside woke with the usual sounds of engines, footsteps, and distant voices. Yet inside, the atmosphere remained heavy. The girl still slept peacefully on the couch, curled under the blanket, glowing marks faint and calm. Daniel sat near the window, eyes fixed on the street. He had barely slept. Every sound outside felt like a warning. Every shadow seemed alive. His mind replayed the moment he saw movement in the night. Someone had been watching. He was certain of it. As the girl stirred, he turned his gaze back to her. Her eyes fluttered open, and for the first time, she seemed less afraid. She sat up slowly, hugging the blanket to her chest. Her lips formed broken words. "Safe." "Here," she whispered. The words made Daniel's chest tighten. "Yes," he said softly. "You're safe here." But even as he said it, he wondered if it was true. She walked unsteadily around the room, curious about everything she touched. The window, the chair, even the books piled near the table. Then she looked at Daniel and pointed at herself. "No name," she said. Her voice cracked but clear enough to understand. Daniel frowned. "No name?" he asked. She shook her head. Her people had never given her one. Or perhaps they had erased it. He felt a surge of anger but controlled it. "Then we'll find one for you," he said. Before she could respond, a noise outside snapped his attention. The sharp metallic sound of something scraping against the alley wall. He stood quickly, pulling the curtain aside just a fraction. His blood ran cold. There were figures, 3 of them, cloaked in dark armor that reflected faint light. They moved silently, scanning the area with strange devices. Their heads turned unnaturally, too smooth, too precise. Like machines blended with flesh. The girl gasped the moment she saw them. Her glowing marks flared, and she stumbled back. Her voice trembled as she whispered in her own tongue. Daniel did not understand, but her fear told him everything. These were the ones who had abandoned her, or worse, the ones sent to take her away. He closed the curtain quickly. "They're looking for you, aren't they?" he asked. The girl nodded weakly, clutching the blanket tighter. Her whole body shook. Her marks glowed brighter, pulsing as if reacting to the presence of those outside. Daniel's mind raced. He was just a man, an ordinary human with no weapons. No special training, yet here he was, caught between a helpless alien girl and dangerous hunters. He looked at her, at the way she curled against the wall. Her fear raw and real. Something inside him hardened. He couldn't give her up. "Not now," he whispered firmly. "You're not going back to them." The girl looked up at him, her eyes wide, for the first time. She seemed to believe him. Outside, the armored figures drew closer. Their strange devices hummed, glowing faintly blue as they scanned the walls. Daniel's heart pounded. He moved to the door, quietly locking it. Then he looked around, searching for anything he could use. A chair, a metal rod, even a kitchen knife. His apartment was no fortress, but he would not let them in easily. The girl clutched the edge of the couch, her body glowing brighter now. She whispered again, but this time Daniel caught a few words. "They take me." "Erase." Her fear was not only about being captured, but about being destroyed. Erased from existence, Daniel knelt beside her, placing a hand on her shoulder. "I won't let that happen," he said. His voice was steady, though his heart raced. Her eyes locked onto his, and in that moment, something shifted. Her glow steadied. Not wild but controlled. It was as if his words anchored her. A shadow passed over the window. One of the hunters stopped right outside. A mechanical click echoed, followed by a deep hum. Daniel's muscles tensed. He held his breath. The girl pressed closer to him, whispering softly, "Hide, hide." Her glowing eyes darted to the small storage space under the floorboards. Daniel understood. He lifted the rug quickly and opened the hatch, guiding her inside. She hesitated, then slid into the darkness. Her glow dimmed as she pulled the blanket around her. Daniel closed the hatch just as heavy footsteps approached the door. A loud knock thundered through the apartment. He froze. The sound repeated, deeper, demanding. Then a mechanical voice spoke through the door, harsh and alien. "Unit found. Surrender subject." Daniel's heart pounded in his ears. He looked toward the hidden hatch, then back at the door. He could run. He could pretend ignorance. But as the voice repeated the command, he felt his decision solidify. He would not betray her. He tightened his grip on the kitchen knife he had found. His hand shook, but his eyes burned with resolve. "Not here," he muttered under his breath. "Not anymore." The knocking stopped. Silence stretched for a moment. Then the doorknob rattled. The hunters were no longer asking. They were preparing to enter. Daniel braced himself, every nerve alive with fear and determination. In the shadows beneath the floor, the girl covered her mouth, glowing faintly. Her heart raced as fast as his. The watchers had found them, and the night was no longer safe. The apartment door shook violently. Metal clashed against metal as the hunters forced their way in. Daniel stood frozen for a moment, the kitchen knife trembling in his grip. He was only human, fragile compared to them. But his heart beat with a fire he had never felt before. With a deafening crack, the door burst open. Splinters flew across the floor. 3 hunters stepped inside. Their bodies were tall, armored in black plates that gleamed faintly under the dull ceiling light. Their faces were hidden beneath masks that hummed softly with energy. Their eyes glowed red like tiny burning coals. The leader scanned the room, his voice mechanical yet sharp. "Subject detected. Release at once." The sound sent a chill down Daniel's spine, but he planted his feet firmly, knife pointed forward. "She's not here," he said. His voice steady though his hands trembled. The hunter's head tilted unnaturally, studying him. "You shelter the defective one." It hissed. "She is ours to erase." Daniel's heart hammered. He knew they were stronger, faster, ruthless. But when he thought of the girl hiding under the floorboards, shivering and afraid, he felt his fear harden into resolve. "If you want her," he said firmly, "you'll have to go through me." The room fell silent. Only the low hum of their armor filled the air. Then one of the hunters let out a harsh, static-filled laugh. "Human defiance," it mocked. "You are weak, your bones break easily. Why sacrifice yourself for discarded waste?" Daniel gritted his teeth. His grip tightened on the knife. "Because she's not waste," he shouted. "She's alive, she matters." His words were raw, filled with emotion he couldn't explain. He had only met her a day ago, yet his heart already told him the truth. She deserved more than death. The hunters stepped closer, their heavy boots crushing the wooden floor. Daniel raised the knife higher. His body screamed with fear, but he didn't move aside. He would not. Beneath the floor, the girl's glowing marks pulsed brighter. She could hear his voice, strong and unyielding, her eyes filled with tears. No one had ever spoken for her. No one had ever stood in front of danger just to protect her. Something deep inside her stirred, something long buried. The hunters lunged forward. One swung an armored arm at Daniel. The blow sent him crashing into the wall. Pain shot through his ribs, but he forced himself back to his feet. Blood trickling from his lip, he raised the knife again. "I won't let you have her," he growled. Leader raised a strange weapon, a rod humming with deadly light. It aimed directly at Daniel's chest. The girl's body under the floor shivered violently. Her marks blazed like fire. The energy coursed through her veins. Responding to the human's defiance, her small hands pressed against the floorboards. And with a sudden burst of power, the wood cracked. A blinding light exploded into the room. The hunters staggered back, their sensors flickering in confusion. Daniel shielded his eyes. When the glow faded, the girl stood in the middle of the room. No longer trembling, the blanket fell away. Her body glowing with intricate patterns, silver lines covering her arms, chest, and face. Her eyes blazed like twin stars. The hunters hissed. Activation detected. They raised their weapons. But the girl lifted her hand. The energy pulsed. Outward in a shockwave, the hunters were thrown back violently, crashing into the walls. Sparks flew from their armor. Their mechanical voices screeched in distortion. Daniel stared in disbelief, his mouth dry. The fragile girl he had sheltered now radiated strength beyond anything he had seen. But when her glowing eyes turned to him, he saw not anger, but fear and confusion. She whispered softly, "Power? Mine?" Her voice cracked as if even she didn't understand what was happening. Daniel staggered toward her, ignoring the pain in his ribs. He placed a hand on her shoulder. "It's okay," he said firmly. "It's yours. It's not a curse. It's who you are." His words steadied her trembling glow. The hunters rose again, damaged but not defeated. Their voices hissed in unison. Unstable subject must be terminated. They charged once more. This time, Daniel didn't move aside. Stepped in front of her. Arms spread wide. "If you want her, you'll have to kill me first." His voice thundered with defiance. The girl's glow flared, stronger than before. Her marks pulsed with rhythm, matching the beat of her racing heart. His courage fueled her. His words gave her strength. She raised her hands, and light erupted once more. A second shockwave ripped through the apartment, shattering the windows. The hunters were hurled outside. Crashing onto the street below, their armor cracked and sparked. They struggled to rise, but their systems faltered. Breathing heavily, the girl fell to her knees, her glow dimming. Daniel rushed to her side, holding her steady. "You did it," he whispered. "You're stronger than they ever believed." Tears rolled down her glowing cheeks. She looked at him with trembling lips. "You protect me," she whispered. "Why?" Daniel smiled weakly, brushing dust from her hair. "Because someone should," he said. "And because you deserve a chance." For a moment, the world seemed still. The hunters retreated, dragging their broken forms into the shadows. But Daniel knew they would return, stronger and angrier. Yet for now, the girl was safe. And for the first time, she was not only safe, but alive in a way she had never been before. Her power had awakened, sparked by a human's defiance. The apartment was silent after the battle. Only the sound of broken glass crackling under Daniel's boots filled the air. The girl leaned against him, her glowing patterns faint now, her body weak but her spirit alive. Daniel guided her back to the couch, wrapping the blanket around her trembling shoulders. She clutched it tightly, her eyes downcast, as if ashamed of what she had unleashed. "Too much," she whispered. "Danger." Daniel shook his head, kneeling in front of her. "Not danger," he said firmly. "Strength. You're stronger than they ever thought. You only need to learn to control it." His words were gentle but steady. She looked at him with wide eyes, her lips trembling. No one had ever told her she had value. No one had ever seen her as anything more than a mistake. Yet here was a human, a stranger, who spoke to her as if she mattered. For the next few hours, Daniel helped her recover. He offered food, water, and calm words. She listened closely, repeating some of the words he spoke. Her voice grew clearer. Her English was broken, but improving. Each word was like a step into a new life later. As the evening sun cast golden light through the shattered windows, Daniel brought her outside. They stood in a quiet alley away from curious eyes. He wanted her to understand her gift, not fear it. "Try again," he encouraged, holding her hand. The girl hesitated. Her glowing marks flickered faintly. She closed her eyes, breathing slowly. Daniel's calm voice guided her. Don't fight it. Just let it flow. Think of it as part of you. Her body trembled, but slowly the glow steadied. The light spread gently across her arms. Not wild this time, not explosive. A soft wave of energy shimmered around her. Harmless yet beautiful. Her eyes widened in wonder. Control, she whispered. Her voice carried both disbelief and joy. Daniel smiled. Yes, you can control it. Over the next few days, Daniel dedicated himself to helping her. He worked during the day, but every night he taught her small lessons. He showed her words, objects, emotions, and she learned quickly. She practiced her power, keeping it calm, shaping it into small bursts of light instead of dangerous waves. With each success, her fear lessened, and something new took its place. Hope. One evening, while they sat at the table, she pointed to his chest. Heart, she said slowly. Daniel chuckled. Yes, that's right. She pressed her hand lightly against her own chest, then back to his. Safe. Heart, she whispered. Her glowing eyes softened. Daniel felt his throat tighten. He nodded. Yes, you're safe here. But deep inside, he realized something more. She was no longer just someone he protected. She was becoming part of his life, part of his heart. The girl began to smile more often. Small, gentle smiles that brightened the dim apartment. She learned to say words like home, friend, and family. Each time, Daniel felt the walls of his loneliness break a little more. He had lived quietly, without much meaning. Until she entered his life, now everything felt different. But peace did not last completely. Sometimes in the middle of the night, Daniel would wake to the sound of faint whispers outside. The hunters had not given up. They were searching, waiting. He knew the danger was far from over. Still, he decided not to tell her. Not yet. She needed hope, not fear. One night, as rain pattered softly against the window, the girl sat beside him. Her glowing eyes reflected the dim light. She looked at him and spoke slowly, her words careful. You give me what they never did, she said. Daniel leaned closer. What is that? He asked. She touched her chest, where her glowing patterns pulsed faintly. A heart, she whispered. Her voice shook, but her eyes shone with truth. Daniel was silent for a long moment. His heart ached. He placed a hand gently over hers, feeling the faint warmth of her glow. Then keep it safe, he said softly. It's yours now. Tears welled in her eyes, but she smiled through them. It was a fragile smile, yet filled with something new. Trust. For the first time in her life, she was not an experiment, not a mistake, not a piece of discarded trash. She was someone with a heart, someone who mattered. And for Daniel, who had once lived a simple, lonely life, she was no longer just a stranger. She was a reason to fight, a reason to protect, a reason to believe that even in a dark world, kindness could awaken something greater. Outside, the hunters plotted, their machines scanning the city. But inside that small apartment, something more powerful than any weapon had already been born. A bond between a human and an alien, a bond that could not be erased. Asterisk. The days that followed were fragile. The girl grew stronger with Daniel's care. She learned more words. Her power became calmer, and her eyes no longer carried the same fear. But the shadow outside never left. Daniel felt it every time he looked out the window, every time he heard a sound in the alley. The hunters were waiting, watching. One night, as the moonlight spilled into the apartment, the quiet broke. A low hum filled the air, vibrating through the walls. Daniel stood quickly, his heart pounding. The girl rose too, her glowing marks flickering nervously. She whispered one word, them. Through the window, Daniel saw them, not 3 this time, but 6. Their black armored figures moved with purpose. Weapons glowed faintly in their hands. They were not searching anymore. They had come to take her. Daniel clenched his fists. He had no real weapons, no training, just courage and the will to protect her. He turned to the girl. We can't stay here, he said firmly. They'll break through, we need to move. Her eyes trembled. She stepped closer to him. If I go, you're safe, she whispered. Her voice cracked. She was offering herself, willing to surrender to save him. Daniel shook his head sharply. No, he said. That's not freedom. That's chains. You deserve more than that. His voice burned. With emotion, the girl hesitated. She looked down, her glowing marks flickering weakly. Her people had never given her choices. They had discarded her when she failed to meet their standards. Now faced with danger, she believed her only worth was sacrifice. Daniel cupped her face gently, making her meet his eyes. Listen to me, he said. You're not a mistake. You're not theirs anymore. You're free to choose. And I'll stand with you no matter what. Her lips parted, her eyes wide. No one had ever told her she could choose. Slowly she nodded. Her glow steadied. For the first time she wanted freedom, not just for herself, but for the human who gave her a heart. The building shook as the hunters slammed against the door. Daniel pulled her toward the back exit. Together they ran into the rain-soaked streets. Water splashed under their feet. Thunder rolled above. The hunters followed, their heavy steps echoing behind them. Blue lights scanned the alley. The girl's glow made it impossible to hide. Daniel pulled her into a side passage, but a mechanical voice boomed. Subject detected. Surrender. She clung to Daniel's hand, her chest rising with fear. If I fight, they hurt you, she whispered. Daniel shook his head. Then we fight together, he said. His voice was steady. He would not leave her. The hunters surrounded them in the narrow street. Weapons raised, their red eyes burned through the night. Defective subject, termination required, the leader declared. The girl trembled. Her marks flickered wildly. She felt the power building inside her, too strong to control. Her fear whispered that she would harm Daniel, that she was still dangerous. But then she remembered his words, you can choose. Her glow steadied. She looked at him, her voice clear for the first time. I choose freedom. Daniel squeezed her hand. His chest swelled with pride. Then show them, he said. She raised both hands. The energy burst outward, not chaotic, but focused. A wave of silver light surged through the street. The hunters staggered, their weapons sparking. Daniel shielded his face from the brilliance. The hunters tried to strike back, their weapons firing beams of energy. Daniel pulled her aside, but she pushed him behind her. Her glow flared brighter, forming a shield of pure light. The beam struck but dissolved against her power. Daniel's eyes widened in awe. She had turned her fear into strength. The hunters faltered, their voices distorted with anger, unstable threat. But the girl's voice cut through, trembling yet strong, not unstable. Alive, she said. Her words carried across the rain with one final burst. Her power exploded in a shockwave. The hunters were hurled backward, their armor cracking. Sparks flying. One by one they collapsed into the wet ground, unable to rise. The street fell silent except for the rain. The girl swayed on her feet, exhausted. Daniel caught her before she fell, holding her close. You did it, he whispered. You chose for yourself. Her glowing eyes looked into his, filled with tears. Free. Because of you, she said softly. Her voice broke, but her smile was real. Daniel shook his head gently. No, he said. Because of you. You chose it. You earned it. She rested her head against his chest, her body trembling but alive. The rain washed over them. The hunters lay broken in the shadows, but Daniel knew more would come. They would not give up easily, yet something had changed. The girl was no longer homeless, no longer helpless. She was no longer only a burden or a secret experiment. She was free, and she had chosen to stand with him. And Daniel knew one thing with certainty: no matter what came next, he would fight beside her. Because sometimes freedom was not just about escaping chains. It was about finding someone who gave you the courage to break them. The storm passed slowly. Rain softened into a gentle drizzle. The broken hunters lay silent in the alley, their red eyes dimmed, their machines sparking faintly before going dark. Daniel held the girl close, her glowing patterns fading as her strength left her, yet in her eyes was no longer fear, it was peace. He guided her back to the apartment. Every step was heavy. His ribs ached, his body bruised, but his heart carried him forward. She leaned against him. Her breaths shallow, but each one steady. She was alive, and that was all that mattered inside. Daniel lit a small lamp. Its warm light filled the broken room. The girl sat quietly on the couch, holding the blanket tight. She watched him carefully as he tended to his wounds. Her glowing eyes soft, her lips moved as she whispered slowly, "You hurt because me." Daniel shook his head, giving her a small smile. "No," he said gently. "I hurt because I chose to stand with you, and I'd choose it again." His words made her chest tighten. Her glowing marks pulsed faintly like a heartbeat. Days passed. The city continued as if nothing had changed, but for Daniel, everything was different. He repaired the broken door, patched the windows, and tried to return to normal life yet. He knew nothing was truly normal anymore. He was no longer alone. The girl was part of his life now. She learned more words each day. Her sentences grew clearer. She asked questions about everything, about books, about food, about the stars. Each answer made her eyes shine with curiosity. Daniel watched her grow, not just in strength, but in spirit. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, she sat beside him, her voice soft but clear. "Name," she said. He looked at her, puzzled. "You want a name?" He asked. She nodded, her glowing eyes hopeful. Daniel thought for a moment, then smiled. "Leora," he said softly. "It means light." The girl repeated it. "Leo." "Ra." The sound was gentle on her lips. She smiled. "Leora," she whispered, as if claiming it for herself. From that day, she was no longer nameless. She was Leora, but danger was never far. Sometimes Daniel caught sight of shadows moving across rooftops. Sometimes he heard the faint hum of machines in the distance. The hunters were regrouping. They would return, stronger. But this time, Daniel was not afraid. Leora was not the same trembling girl he had found in the cold. She had power, and more importantly, she had chosen to fight for her freedom. One night, as they sat watching the stars through the cracked window, Leora spoke quietly. "They come again." Daniel nodded. "Yes," he admitted, "but we'll be ready." She turned to him, her glowing eyes reflecting starlight. "Together," she said firmly. He smiled. Together. Their bond had grown beyond protection, beyond fear. It was something deeper, something unbreakable. She was no longer just the girl he saved. She was his reason to fight, and he was no longer just her shelter. He was her home. Weeks passed, and whispers spread in the city. People had seen flashes of light, strange figures in the night. Rumors of a glowing girl hiding among humans began to spread. Some feared her, some dismissed her, but others began to wonder if she was a sign of something greater. One morning, as Daniel walked with Leora through the quiet streets, a child pointed at her glowing marks. Instead of running in fear, the child smiled. Leora froze, her heart racing. Daniel squeezed her hand gently. She smiled back, shy but real. For the first time, she was not seen as a mistake, but as a miracle. At night, Leora whispered to Daniel, "Before, no heart, no home now. Because of you, I live." Daniel held her hand, his voice soft but strong. "And because of you, I believe in more than survival." The hunters would come again, stronger, fiercer. But Daniel and Leora no longer feared the future. They had something worth fighting for, something stronger than armor or weapons. They had each other. The sun rose one morning, painting the sky in shades of gold and red. Daniel stood at the window, Leora beside him. Her glowing patterns shimmered softly. In the light, she looked at the horizon and whispered, "New dawn." Daniel smiled, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "Yes," he said, "a new dawn." She leaned her head against him, her eyes closing. For once, the world did not feel cruel. For once, the future did not seem empty. She was no longer homeless, no longer naked, no longer alone. She had found something no machine, no hunter, no shadow could ever erase. She had found shelter in a human's heart,